Hello, my name is Bennett Robbins, and this is my presentation on my personal best leadership experience for Management 605's Week 1 assignment. All right, moving on to the overview of this presentation. So my personal leadership experience, it involves myself coming to my new unit in the military and transforming that unit into a more welcoming and positive group, which I'll get into later in this presentation. The presentation is going to have a brief introduction on my opinion of what leadership is and what it takes, as well as some context and actions in the situation that developed in my leadership experience. And we will end this presentation with just some key takeaways as well as some conclusions on what I've learned of what it takes to be a leader. All right, so my personal definition of leadership is influencing individuals to meet a set of goals. Now, that influence involves motivating, persuading, and grit. Leaders, they need to be able to persevere and be resilient in the toughest of times. And it's extremely important to have a goal because you need something for individuals to buy into. One of the common misunderstandings that a lot of people have is the difference between leadership and management. So managers are mainly there just to monitor a process. What takes a manager to the next level, what takes a manager to become a leader, is actually being invested in whatever it is that their job entails. So a manager will follow instructions and make sure the subordinates are following instructions, whereas a leader might actually get dirty, get his hands on the floor with his subordinates or coworkers, whatever you want to call them, and motivate them to get the job finished. All right, so just for some context and background of my personal best leadership experience, it's going to involve the setting, my personal experiences, as well as the goals. That'll give you the full picture of what I'm trying to describe here. So first off, the setting. So in the United States military, there's a lot of common misconceptions of the public of what the Army is, what it entails, what it means to be a soldier. A lot of people have like this picture perfect image, but they also envision a lot of discipline in the military. So that's kind of where the old Army versus new Army problem comes into view. So nowadays we have what's called an HR department, so to speak. So in the old Army, you could get away with screaming at people, you could get away with smoking people, like you see in the picture here in the slide, making people do exercises when they mess up. And a lot of problems were solved with violence. It used to be okay to fight your superiors and vice versa over disagreements. But now in the new Army, as things have progressed, we realized that there are better ways to solve problems. So in the Army today, you have a lot of the old Army people that have stuck around and still believe that violence and screaming are the best way to do things. And then you have the new Army people who have received training on diversity and problem solving that the old Army people refuse to adapt to. In the old Army, there were military occupational specialties. Those MOSs are still around today, but in the old Army, it was a lot different. You were basically told to stay in your lane. Instead of it being one team, one dream, and all the MOSs working together, it was you're either infantry or infantry support, and that's kind of how the training went for inbound recruits. So me as a new soldier, I went to basic training. I had drill sergeants in charge of me that preached that infantry were the big, bad, cool soldiers and that we were better than everybody else. They still screamed at us and smoked us and did all the fun stuff that they love to do, but you're given an ego when you're in infantry because you're told that you're supposed to be better than everybody else. So you come from that learning environment of basic training to your new unit, and you quickly discover that things are different. Basically, what happens in infantry is because there's so many of us, they just promote based on time and service, not actual qualifications. So what happens are these 17 and 18-year-olds join the military, they hit their 2 years time in service, they go to a board that's really not that hard to pass, and then they get pinned on the rank of sergeant and suddenly they're in charge of you. And because they don't have any real work experience or real educational background, what they do is they take advantage of their position and they do everything that was done to them because now they know that they can get away with it. So what it does is it destroys morale, there's a complete lack of trust, and there's just a lot of problems that are derived from this system. Moving on to my personal experience and background. So I put a little picture of Bernie Sanders on here to give you an idea. Well, it's not necessarily political. I was originally from Vermont. I went to college in California, which obviously has more of like a liberal background, right? Obviously, I have a college education. I'm here working on my master's degree. I grew up playing lots of contact sports, and from those sports, I learned what it's like to get dirty, right? When I was in school, I always worked multiple jobs to support myself and my family, so I know what it's like to work hard. Now, as someone with a liberal background, a lot of people in the military compare that to being soft. I personally don't agree. I think that having empathy is a sign of emotional intelligence and is actually necessary to be a good leader. In terms of my personal familiarity with this type of situation, being on sports teams growing up, I knew what it was like to be popular. I saw my fellow athletes bully those that were not athletes. And while I didn't necessarily partake in the bullying, being a bystander made me guilty of being a bully, just for being there and not sticking up for those that were having wrong things done to them. So from that life experience, I've tried to turn things around as an adult. Now, in terms of goals, to provide some more context, obviously I was not happy with the way things were in my unit as an older individual coming into the Army and being surrounded by a bunch of kids with low morale that don't want to work hard, don't want to train, and aren't happy to be there. I wanted to also increase cohesion. If people are unhappy, they're probably not going to work well together. And lastly, obviously, just eliminate negativity. Part of life is being able to strive past negative things and continue to be resilient and work on. And so those were the three goals: increase morale, increase cohesion, and eliminate negativity in the unit. So moving on to actions. The actions that I took to reach these goals were to create an inclusive environment, to network with outside individuals, and to create events that would also further contribute to these goals. So inclusion. Upon coming to my unit, I realized that most people didn't even know each other's first names. They didn't know their first names, they didn't know how to spell each other's names, they didn't have each other's phone numbers. It was pretty much just, hey, you private, go do this. Hey, you private, go do that. And because everybody was so miserable, they didn't want to hang out with each other. They didn't want to do anything fun or productive. They just wanted to go to their rooms, play video games, and go to sleep. Either that or just drink. One of the big issues in our unit was during class times, they have something called leaders time training. It's more like manager time training, but basically whoever's in charge would be tasked out with giving us a class. These would basically be called pocketbook classes because some NCO or some manager would pull out their notebook, read notes off of their notebook, and that was the class. They wouldn't ask us if we had any questions. They wouldn't ensure that we actually understood it. And if we didn't understand it, we got smoked. So if he asked if he had any questions, everyone would be like, nope, we understand, everything's good to go. So after these classes, what I started doing is getting people together and being like, all right, look, I'm not going to mess you guys up. I'm one of you guys. What did we learn today? And sure enough, most people, they didn't even have basic note-taking skills. So I even hosted a class on how to take notes. I showed them how to make a basic outline because these were skills that weren't necessarily taught to these individuals. The Army is extremely diverse. There's a lot of people that come from less privileged backgrounds, and it was extremely prevalent that we needed to start including people. So whether that was in classrooms, whether it was in PT in the morning, we have all these formations where we stand around and we just wait for hours. And there's individuals that just sit by themselves. So I really started encouraging people to get involved, encouraged participation, encouraged asking questions. And that was just one of the many things we did to meet our goals. So moving on to networking. So one of the first things I did as a soldier is I met with my leadership and I brought it to their attention. I said, hey, look, I know I'm a new soldier. I know I need to earn some respect around here, but our unit has a problem. There are individuals that are suicidal. There are individuals that I'm legitimately worried about their mental health because they have no hobbies. They're just miserable. They're depressed. They don't want to be here. What can we do to make things better? What can I do to make things better as a soldier? That alone actually got me put into a leadership position. So that helped my whole cause and action and everything that goes into this scenario having an official title to go along with what I was trying to accomplish. One of the things too, like when you come to a military installation, you don't immediately get put in your unit. You're in what's called like an in-processing platoon. So you're with a lot of people of different MOSs and other units. So right from the get-go, I was networking with other individuals before I even realized there was a problem in my troop. But once I came to my troop, I said, oh my goodness, not every unit can be like this. Let's go and see what other units are doing. To my surprise, the other units actually were very similar to my own, but there were certain things that they made me aware of in terms of opportunities that could make things better. And one of those were access to some of both the military and non-military organizations. So we have what's called BOSS, Better Opportunities for Single Soldiers. We also have the MWR Club. And these are just like recreational clubs that people have access to, and most military people didn't know about it. So I went and I met with these clubs. I got some flyers. I posted the flyers. We have closeout meetings at the end of every single day, and they almost always say, does anybody else have anything to say? And nobody would ever speak up. So I kind of became that guy that said, hey, I'd just like to make everyone aware this weekend there's going to be an event. Here's where it is. Here's how you can participate. If you want information, come find me. And just that simple tool really created a more inclusive environment as well. Lastly, so I'm a big sports guy, as I mentioned before, but I started personally hosting events. So our unit didn't really have like a PT plan or anything like that, but a lot of people were very interested in getting in shape because that's part of our job as soldiers. So I started making workout plans for people, started organizing people into workout groups with people that were similar in fitness, so that way they wouldn't be detrimental to each other. I actually started a softball team. I started hosting sporting events on base as well. I just started inviting everybody. Like I got everybody's contact information, and very soon I kind of became just like that guy in my troop to go to if you want to do anything outside of work. People went from spending nights playing video games and drinking in their room to actually coming out and doing something productive and meeting people, and I think it really increased the mental health of our unit. We also did cookouts and game nights. We did my wife and I, we hosted a stromboli night at our house, actually multiple stromboli nights. Basically it's like a build your own pizza, but you roll it up so it's a little easier. We always had a really good turnout with that, and it just really helped us meet the goals that I had for our unit. So lastly, just the takeaways from this entire situation. So first off, treat others how you want to be treated. All right, this is something that's told to us in elementary school, but it's very easy to forget. Like I said, we had a cycle in my unit that was really, it was toxic. These kids that got into leadership positions, they decided that instead of being good soldiers and instead of trying to fix things, they were just going to take advantage of their position, not work, and then just punish people for questioning their authority. And obviously that's not how anybody wanted to be treated. That takes us into takeaway number 2. Remember what was wrong and fix it. So it's something that I preach to all my new soldiers. If you see something that is wrong, when you get into that position, don't repeat the process just because you know you can get away with it. If it's wrong, remember it, write it down, bring it to somebody's attention, and if they don't fix it, when you get to that position, make sure you do things differently. Make sure you do things the right way. And lastly, always look for something positive. In the military, we have a saying, it's hunt the good stuff. It's part of our resiliency training. Basically, you could be at the range, right? It could be 120 degrees outside. You could be sweating. You could have dirt in your eyes. You could be getting eaten up by mosquitoes. But maybe you see a bald eagle floating overhead and you're like, wow, like that's really cool. I'm out here in nature. I'm out here shooting. I like to shoot. Like there are positive things about this situation. I just need to hone in on whatever's good about this situation rather than soaking away in my misery. Those are the 3 key takeaways I have from this situation. Moving on to just the conclusion. Leadership is an important aspect required for all organizations in order to thrive. Now, a task can get accomplished by a manager, but the individuals that complete that task might not necessarily be satisfied. They might not want to work with you again, and they might just be going through the motions. Leaders are something that can change that. Leaders are something that can continue to create a positive environment, continue to create results, and leadership could be long or short term. Anybody can step up at any time to become a leader when the situation calls for it. That's all I have for this presentation. Thank you for listening.